All right, hi everybody. Welcome. It's the pilot episode of Cryptic Puzzle. My name's Andy,
I'm Tommy.
and this is our YouTube channel slash podcast where we're gonna do deep dives into games we really love. Uh, this is on YouTube. It's meant to be sort of like a podcast like experience where you can sort of just listen in the background if you want, or you can enjoy the stream gameplay footage of it. But yeah. Tommy, how did we get the idea for doing this in the first place?
So I think we originally talked about this. I think it's because you played Devil May Cry 5, right? And we were just gushing about that game, and I was like, we should just record this and talk about something because I haven't done that ever before. So let's do that because I could go on for hours about stuff. So be prepared for long, rambling, nonsense rants about stuff that most people don't care about, but I do, and probably Andy does.
Yeah, well, I feel like we probably vocalized it in Devil May Cry 5, but very often we find ourselves on long tangents about games.
Yes.
Like over the summer when we were arguing about Tears of the Kingdom and Elden Ring, and
Oh
it
yeah.
actually probably started with Elden Ring because for a long time we've had like in-depth conversations about why that game is good and not good, and like what makes it awesome. And
Yeah, and you and I feel both kind of like both positively but also very differently about it, and you're not 100% sure how you feel about certain things. And yeah, we've talked for probably hours just because
yeah.
at this point. So
Yeah, and I think we're both really interested in like I don't want to say like backseat game designing, hopefully, but like really dissecting with like, oh, this is why this game works for me or why it's interesting. But we also tend to have a lot of overlap, but a lot of differences in why games work for us and stuff.
yeah.
Which brings us to this game,
Yeah.
Sea of Stars,
Yeah.
which I have been so pumped about this game for years. I don't know if you have or if you knew about this game at all.
I remember hearing about there being some sort of follow up from Sabotage Studios to The Messenger, which was their first release, only release, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so we both talked and played the Messenger. However many years ago it came out now, right? Four or
Like
5 years ago.
2018 or something.
Yeah,
I
something
think.
like that. Yeah, excellent, excellent, excellent. That's a 2D platformer which switches between kind of a fundamental 8-bit old school Ninja Gaiden style and then a more in depth 16-bit almost Metroidvania explory version of the world. Excellent game, fantastic, big recommend on that, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about the follow up, which I believe is a multiple thousand year prequel to The Messenger.
I think that's correct.
Yes.
First, I just want to say like how I came to this, to knowing about this game. So,
Did we say the title of it?
Sea of Stars. Yeah, we did.
Oh crap.
Sea of,
Oh no. All
sea,
right. I'm gonna do that a lot.
what? No, no, it's cool. Sea of Stars. So, yeah, so okay, I heard about this game first. So I played The Messenger, and then a few years later, like around pandemic time, I really played like my first heavy JRPG, which was Octopath Traveler, which I could go on forever about how much I love that game. But like at the time, I didn't really know anything about turn-based JRPG style games, and so I was literally just like, let me look up other games that are similar to Octopath Traveler because I might love this a lot more than I thought I did. And I saw the trailer for Sea of Stars, which was like branded as like, hey, like a love letter to Chrono Trigger and other early style JRPG games, and that was in like 2019. And I was like, this game is mega on my radar. It looks amazing
Yeah.
because I'm really into the whole like modern retro pixel RPG thing that's been happening since Shovel Knight and stuff. And I've literally been excited for this game since 2019, like way pumped about it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you know about it all the way back then?
I don't remember if I knew it was called Sea of Stars. I just remember that there was going to be some kind of follow up, and then in more recent years, as it was like, oh, this is, it's got backers on. I think it was a Kickstarter game. If
Yep.
it was a Kickstarter, it was one of those other crowdfunding sites. So Yeah,
And by
hearing
the way,
about
like, it's way more fascinating that they were like, this is a sequel to The Messenger. And everyone was like, hold on.
yeah, how does that make sense?
Yeah,
right?
like, what?
Yeah.
They wanted, but apparently they always wanted to make a turn-based JRPG. So the fact that that was the follow-up, I feel like made it infinitely more interesting, you know?
Yeah, and hearing the love letter to Chrono Trigger thing, I don't. You and I have also talked relatively in depth about how good that game is. People have been talking about how amazing Chrono Trigger is for like 30 years now almost. So like we don't really need to get into that. There's nothing really to be said that hasn't already been said on that front. I don't think.
All right, so Robo.
Yeah. Best robot character.
Yeah, so but like and really you could see from even the early Kickstarter footage like how like obviously they were going after that style of like turn-based combat in the world in an organic like exploratory way. It's I don't know, man. Like I feel like they nailed it from go even with their vision from years and years ago, you know?
Oh, no doubt. It's very clearly like now having played through this, it's very like they wear the influences on their sleeve very much. I think I texted you immediately when I was like, I went to the world map and the world map layout is identical to Chrono Trigger, including the size of the font and the size of the character and where they place everything on the screen. It's just like ripped straight from that game because
Yeah.
they knew exactly what they were doing. So
Which also is like such a bold move. Like I feel like saying we wrote a love letter to Chrono Trigger, one of the most beloved, revered games of all time, is such a risky thing to do. Like to put yourself up next to what is considered one of the highest masterpieces of all of gaming.
Yes.
But I really think while wearing the inspiration on their sleeves, they really made something of their own, which I think is hugely why this game is so special. Like I don't think it's really trying to rip from Chrono Trigger, even though it's hugely inspired by it.
Yeah, there's very, very, as I said, like the world map design
Yeah.
moments and everything, but it's not like a. It is.
It's not
e-
trying to be Chrono Trigger.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
not trying to replace it. It's not even what I would call almost like a tribute game. It is just very clearly, heavily inspired by. We loved this thing. We want to make something else that reminds me of the thing that made me feel that way when I played this game as a kid. You know,
Yeah.
and I think they succeed in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I don't know. It's I don't know if it's an all-timer for me, but like it's definitely up there for JRPGs cuz I just think it's doing something so unique and special. Like I get the warm and fuzzies immediately just like watching through this game again and like playing it with you. I think it really is something all its own, which is why I love it so freaking much.
Yep. Yeah, and how it sort of ties into the Messenger's world and story is pretty cool because it's not overt, but it does every now and then if you played the Messenger make you go, oh, that's what that is.
Yeah.
Which is I think the right way to do that. You know, it's not shoehorning it in. It's not trying to like force a story where there doesn't need to be one. Sea of Stars is its own thing,
Yeah.
very much so, but with a couple of kind of tentacles reaching out to like, hey, and this is why certain things ended up becoming the way they were in the world of the Messenger,
Yeah.
which I think is a nifty way to do it. And they do it in a lot of ways, both kind of in, you know, hey, here's a familiar name of a thing, or here's like a design where you're like, oh, that's what that is.
Or here's the music, and you're like, yes,
That,
yes.
that was the moment for me. The
Yeah.
first time I heard a song that was literally just right from the Messenger, but slightly rearranged for this game. And I went, okay, I see exactly what we're doing here. Got it. Cool.
Yeah, it's cool because it like feels in a way like a franchise, but also sort of like a universe that they're building, like a very just unique and interesting like little world that they're creating. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess if you've never played Sea of Stars, like this, largely the beginning of this conversation will be spoiler free. There will be a point when we'll really like dive into the deep dive at the end of the game, but for now we're in spoiler free territory.
Yeah, more so just like premise things, which you're going to find in the first 20 minutes of the game. So unless you consider those spoilers, yeah, this is going to be pretty light on that.
Yeah. So the game starts. You play as one of two solstice warriors named Valerie or Zale, and they make you choose. It's kind of an odd choice, like we were discussing earlier. It's weird that they make you choose because you really play as two protagonists simultaneously, and you can swap out your party pretty freely. But like, they start and they're on some sort of journey, obviously as solstice warriors. I don't even know if they really set up like who the antagonist is or anything of the plot. You kind of just go and they're like climbing a mountain and you fight a couple enemies to get you going.
Yeah, and I think they might bring up like we gotta train you guys to fight the dwellers, and we don't really talk about what those things are yet. But the dwellers just sounds like some evil thing that
Yeah.
we're destined to fight kind of deal. So very typical fantasy sort of like we're the good guys, we got to beat the evil thing that's like terrorizing the world. Not a whole lot going on early on.
Yeah, and so I actually feel like it's kind of an interesting move that maybe some people have criticized. I personally liked the intro, but after like a quick intro where they're teaching you a couple battle mechanics, they are like, cool, here's a flashback to like 15 years ago. And then there's like a pretty lengthy story segment explaining Valerie and Zale's like when they're younger, like the beginning of their training as solstice warriors. You're also introduced to Garl, who in like the first story beats, they're like, man, we miss Garl. Garl's not here. And then they go in the past and they kind of explain like briefly how you got separated from Garl in your childhood, which is a cool little story beat. I feel like maybe we shouldn't spoil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a neat little thing in the intro.
But they kind of make you fall in love with Garl pretty quickly, I feel like, more than even Valerie or Zale, who are, I feel they're like, for not silent protagonists, they might as well be.
Yeah, that's something I don't think you and I have actually talked about this. They almost treat Garl more like the protagonist than your actual protagonist in some ways, even to the point where I think later on in the game, people spend a lot more time talking about Garl and they kind of just refer to you guys as the Solstice Warriors because that's kind of your thing in your title, and it's an expectation. It's a thing people know about in the world. But they talk more specifically about the character of Garl than they do about the character of. I looked up the pronunciation of this, Andy. It's Valir, not Valerie.
Valerie.
It's spelled Valere. Valir.
Valerie by Amy Winehouse.
All right, there you go. That's canon now.
Yeah, it's Valir or Valerie or Valer.
I'm going with Valir. We're just gonna call them different names.
It doesn't matter.
It's the same person.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like Valer is the coolest, but I will never get Valerie out of my head because I just rolled with it. But but yeah, like you said, Garl. I think Garl is meant to be the most important protagonist, which I feel like is an interesting bait and switch because like pretty early to like, so Garl does join your party as like the warrior cook, which is, I feel like, such a hilarious way that they play with that JRPG trope. Is they're like, Garl joined your party, he's the warrior cook.
Yeah,
and like it's meant to be played for laughs, kind of.
Yeah, he loves cooking, and his weapon is a pot lid, and he smacks enemies with it. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So
And constantly in the game, like they're like, oh, Valerie and Zale, your prophecy is to save the world, and what's this kid doing here with the backpack? And like he's like, oh, I'm Garl, I'm here to help cook and stuff. And constantly they kind of play it for laughs, like, oh, I guess you're not supposed to be on this journey because you're just a guy.
yeah,
But like that sort of makes him like a very lovable and sympathetic character because he's just a normal dude. And like, I don't know, I love that about, like, I feel like they sneak him in as like, you don't think he's the protagonist, and you kind of find out slowly that he's the most lovable, important character to the story.
yeah,
Over time.
yeah. Without getting into the spoilers
Yeah.
and his significance,
Yeah.
that's to set up your three main heroes. So there are other characters who will join your party as playable characters and stuff later on, but these are kind of the core group of characters.
Yeah, and so, in pretty like typical save the world adventure stuff, like you're traveling the world with Valer and Zale and Garl, and you find other party members who join with a variety of like abilities that really help you. But your job is to track down a number of dwellers and basically save the earth from them. Like it feels like very standard fantasy stuff, even though there's a lot of cool twists and turns along the way. But I feel like that's a pretty good core of what the game is.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I like personally, I love it because I love getting swept up and immersed in games like this, and I think this game really feels like an adventure. I think that's maybe the biggest thing about tying it to Chrono Trigger is it feels like a grand adventure. Like you're gonna go places that you don't expect and really like uncover a lot of interesting things in the story and the world.
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest successes of Sea of Stars is that it does manage to capture that same wonder and energy of like and here's our band of adventurers and they're gonna go do the thing that like so many other 16-bit RPGs have done so well in the past. But I think this one, I'm with you on. I don't know that it's necessarily like an all-timer the way that Chrono Trigger and stuff is, but it does read almost like a greatest hits of a lot of those things. It knows why those things work. It knows the types of things to make the characters say to make them, lovable, however it is you want to phrase it, and to make their journey interesting the entire time. You want to see what happens next.
Yeah, yeah, you constantly like from very early but especially later on, you're constantly just like I want to hit the next story beat and see where everything goes, and like I love the feeling of being really early in a game and feeling like, man, I feel like I know like 10% of what is even possible in this game or what I'm gonna see, like that feeling of what possibly lies ahead, and then like when the game delivers on it, you're like, yes.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's a good transition into not just on the story side, but doing mechanics and stuff. Because I think also from those initial battle mechanics you see, I don't know about you, but I very much had to like, oh, this is what we're doing. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right, I can't wait to see how this is going to get more complicated in the future.
Yeah.
So, you want to start off with that?
Yeah, so it's really, I feel like, an amalgamation of all of the great things about it. So like the coolest thing first that they borrow from Chrono Trigger is there are no random encounters. All of the enemies exist organically in the world, and when you encounter them, you like have a battle on the overworld with no transition.
Yes.
Which there's something about that. It feels like such a like small video gamey detail, but something about it elevates like the immersion for me in such a natural way that it just like does so much for me, I feel like.
Yeah, there's part of me where I think it really depends on the presentation, right? Like, I am also very nostalgic for some of the old, like, PS1 era Final Fantasy battle transition screens because there's, like, a cool sound effect and then the music kicks in, but, like, that's the way that was intended to be presented. Whereas I think what Chrono Trigger did very well was constantly make you feel, like you said, like you're adventuring because you're running around and because your battle doesn't actually do any transitions, the music just starts and everyone hops into position to do their fight and you're just in it immediately. It's very quick. It doesn't really take a whole lot of time, and it seems like, hey, this is what would be happening if I was walking through this weird mushroom forest and there's an evil mushroom man who's trying to punch my face in, like, and they're like, oh
Yeah.
no, what do I do?
Yeah.
So that ends up working real well for me.
Yeah, and like I don't even know, maybe you can help me put this into words, like what I'm trying to say. Like I don't know if this is articulated clearly, but like I feel like if I was 10 and I played this game, I wouldn't be like, "Oh, this is a turn-based blah." I would just be like, "This is just a game." Like I would just understand that it's a game where like when you're playing like a Final Fantasy or a Dragon Quest, for example, like everybody has that suspension of disbelief moment when you cut into a transition of a battle and your brain goes, oh, so the game has this part and then it also has the part where I go into a battle, and you have to like negotiate that part of your brain that's like, oh, this is just a thing that happens, right? You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah.
And like something about like not only the combat but the exploration and like everything that you do in the world that is interactable happens right there, that like again you could hand this to a 10-year-old and they wouldn't be like, I'm playing a strategic turn-based JRPG. It just happens so seamlessly, organically, you know?
I think that's, again, where the presentation of everything is very well done. It's very important. It's, even though you are very clearly playing a video game, I think there's a difference between a game where you buy into its world and the way that it's presenting everything to you, and another one where you play it and you go, oh, this is a video game, right?
Yeah, right.
And this is not one of those, right? I think
Yeah.
it's very clear that, like, even though you're doing I'm going to pick the attack button in the menu, but even your attacks and stuff are interactive in this game, right? So everything feels connected to the next thing.
Yeah.
So it's never this disjointed piece of like, oh, I got to do the video game thing now, right?
Yeah, right.
Does it follow video game tropes? Absolutely, it certainly does.
Yeah, yeah.
It borrows very heavily from its Chrono Trigger influences, but I also think that if we're going to talk a little bit more about the battle mechanics specifically, it is somewhere between the Chrono Trigger battle system and. Funnily enough, the Mario and Luigi RPGs. So
Yeah.
it's split pretty evenly between those. The presentation of it is like Chrono Trigger, but I think the actual mechanics are almost closer to the Mario and Luigi RPGs.
Yeah, that's like where the beautiful blend of all these different RPGs come into it, because it again, like, it feels like a greatest hits of all of the mechanics. So every attack that you do in the game and every attack that the enemies do to you has a timing component. So, like, if you're just going to do a standard fare attack with Valerie or Valaire's, like, staff or whatever, when she strikes the enemy, if you hit A at the right time, it does a bonus swing and it does more damage. And everything in the game has that little interactive component, which feels so elevated. So, like, but again, like, it's the best of both worlds, because not only does that enhance your gameplay, you also have to be strategic, where I feel like the Mario RPGs are so stripped down and simple that, like, you don't have to be as strategic. It's all timing, but they really smartly balance the two.
Yeah, this is a lot more. You are expected to engage with those mechanics, I think, than the Mario RPGs, because I assume, and this is not how I played them, but I assume that if you handed like a really little kid one of the Mario RPGs, they could probably fumble their way through it, because the fights, for the most part, in a lot of those games, they aren't actually that hard. You will get through them quicker. You will probably end up with less or more health at the end of the fight if you actually do all your defense things. But you can probably just jump on an enemy's head in the Mario RPG and win the fight without doing most of your mechanics, you know?
Well, see, I don't know how recently you've played those games, but
It's been a little bit, honestly.
yeah, no, I played them somewhat recently, and actually, like, the thing that separates that game from this is, like, in the Mario RPGs, you have to dodge the attacks. If you don't, you will die in, like, 3 hits.
That's true.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, in the sense of this game is elevating versus, like, because even if you time the right attack, the enemy's gonna hit you.
Yes.
Like, they're gonna do damage no matter what. So it's a cool balance there. But so yeah, so there's the timing element, but there's all of these other little things that go into it, and, like, I feel like the developers thought so deeply about, like, every piece of the combat is very well considered into, like, what makes the game fun. So maybe, like, first talk about what happens when you die, because I feel like that is so brilliant and amazing.
Oh, yeah. So when your character gets downed in this, so I believe it's 2 stars appear above their head, so they can't act because they're downed, basically. And every time your party goes through, like, a full rotation of, like, their turns, everyone has used their action for that turn, that star will go down by 1. And then once all the stars go away, they get back up with, I think, 50% of their health. Is that how that works?
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's 50%. And then they can continue fighting. There's items and stuff that you can use to pick up allies sooner if you so choose. You don't necessarily have access to those all the time. Some characters have spells that can do that kind of thing too. And I think the other piece of it is, if that same character goes down multiple times in one fight, the number of stars above their head increases. Mm-hmm. So it starts at 2 and then it would go up to 3. So you are punished for having a character go down multiple times, because it's just going to take a long, long time unless you're actively reviving them at that point too. So you still won't want them to go down, but it's not a, oh no, what do I do? Oh god, I'm out of items. This character's just out of commission now.
Yeah, which it just does a lot to, like, keep you in the flow of battle, because it's like, oh, a character's down, but I'm still in this. What can I do to keep my head afloat?
Yeah, it's kind of it's a comeback mechanic, but it's not an overwhelmingly strong one. Sometimes games have comeback mechanics where it's just like, oh, there's no threat of anything at any point because
Right.
the comeback mechanic's going to save me every time.
Right.
And this doesn't do that. I think it is a almost like a quality of life thing. It's like this is less annoying than it is in a lot of other games when this happens.
Yeah. And also that being said, like I feel like the couple other quality of life things which are great is you can any of your characters can act at any time when it's your turn, which is awesome until you go through 3. So if you have Valere, Zal, and Gale, did I say Gale?
You
What's
said
his name?
Garl.
Garl.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Oh my gosh.
Zale and Garl.
Oh my gosh.
Garl, if they're all out and it's the beginning of your turn, you can freely choose whichever one of them you want to use. If you use Garl, then the next turn you have to use Valere and Zale, and so on. But like it feels like you have so much strategic choice, and we also didn't mention that the enemies display how many turns until they act.
Yep.
So at any time you're like, all right, which one of my 3 characters' abilities is the best to try and stun this enemy so they can't move or take them out. Again, it's like a quality of life thing that just makes the game feel really free and easy to get into the flow of.
Yep, yeah. So on the stun part, so I think this is genuinely the coolest part of the entire combat system because it works very well. So each character's weapon will either be a slash or a blunt type attack. And there's different elements associated with each character's different attacks and skills and abilities. So because we have our 2 Solstice Warriors, Valere has kind of moon powers, and it shows up as a little crescent moon in blue. And Zale is a Sun Warrior, so his are like kind of fiery based and orange ball things. So when an enemy is gearing up to do typically like a more powerful attack, they'll have what they call locks, and they'll show up on one of those enemies. So he'll have like 2 or 3 turns or whatever it is, and then he'll have like a sword, a hammer for the blunt attack, and then like a crescent moon or whatever it is. And if you hit an enemy with that number of attacks before their turn hits, you will actually completely stop that action and prevent them from attacking you to begin with.
Yep.
So that is really, really, really super important in boss fights, where if you just let them continue to do those, you will not succeed. They will absolutely steamroll you and hit you with like giant area of effect attacks that are just gonna blast your entire party with a bunch of damage, or do some weird status effect thing that's going to make weird things happen. And yeah.
And the best part is it's not an all or nothing. So like if the enemy has 3, if they have a sun, moon, and a sword above their head, and you only get the sword and the sun off before they go, it will weaken the attack. So it's like even if you aren't able to completely stun them, it's still in your benefit to play strategically. Like again, it makes everything very intuitive and smart. You know what I mean? It's just a quality of life thing.
Yeah, the only exceptions to the weakening part is there's some enemies, I think it's mostly bosses, that will have a like, I'm gonna throw out like a whole new mob enemy to help me out kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And you'll see as you're hitting them down, because it'll show you the percentage of how much less damage something is going to do. Sometimes it doesn't tick down from 100, which means whatever thing they're about to do is I'm either going to do it or I'm going to not do it kind of thing.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I just like in my head, I know that it weakens the attack, so I didn't even pay attention to like the 70%, 60%. I just, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It literally gives you a number, and sometimes it won't drop from 100. So that's when you know something different is going to come out. It's very interesting though. Like, and you know what? I guess to speak to the strength of it, you didn't even realize that, and you played and beat the game and got the true ending.
Yeah.
But I think like in terms of like the really subtle signaling of what this game will do, of like, hey, this thing's gonna happen, whether or not you recognize it, it's either like, hey, this is a cool thing that you can use to your advantage, or if you don't, it's not that big a deal, you know?
Right. Yeah, I also feel like other great things this game does is when you attack enemies, you just get MP back. Like, what a wonderful thing to just... You know what I mean? Like, it makes it so that no matter what choice you're making, it's always a good choice in some sense. Like, sometimes it's like, well, I need to use this magic special attack. It's in my best interest. And sometimes it's like, I need to use a regular attack, but, like... using a regular attack is always a good option because you're getting MP back and you're also spawning the little boost orbs.
Yes.
Which
We didn't even talk about that
we
yet.
didn't talk about that yet, but when you would do a regular attack, they will enemies will drop these little boost orbs. You can get up to 3 on the battlefield, and at any time you can boost an attack. So it will add an element to your attack. So Valere will add a moon element or a lunar element, and Zale will add like a sun element. So it's another layer of like, oh, if you have boost orbs, you can add an element to an attack, but it will also just boost the latent power no matter what. So
Yep.
like every piece is so well considered to be like fun and strategic, but like you can't really make a whole lot of bad choices.
Yeah, you have
know?
to deliberately kind of do the wrong action for the particular scenario multiple times in a row, and it's usually very obvious what you should be doing because again, the game hides very little from you in terms of that type of information. It's very good at communicating, hey, this thing's going to happen, and it expects you to prepare for doing something about it in some way, and if you don't, you'll be punished, and it's not a surprise. No fight in this entire game, even the handful of ones that I thought were a little bit tougher, feel even remotely unfair.
Yeah.
You always know what is going to happen. You always know what you should be doing. And if you simply don't do it, that's on you. And I think that's a very good, just fundamental game design choice to make. I think that's true of everything. And they just execute it really well in the combat here.
Yeah, I really think this game's strength that I feel like so many other JRPGs can pick up on is just like the sheer simplicity of it. Like I really feel like so many, and I love JRPGs. Like I love Dragon Quest, I love so many of them, but like I feel like the games love to give you a ton of choices and a ton of abilities, and like a lot of times they'll give you like 15 abilities and like the whole game you're like, well, I never even used 4 of these spells ever, or I tried them once and they were pretty useless. But like this game really giving you like Valere, for example, even at the end of the game, you have like attack, you have maybe 5 skills at most to that character specifically.
Everyone gets 3 and then an ultimate, I believe. And then combos.
So like you don't have to be like, well, what are my 15 things that Valere can do? Even in the end game, she only has a handful of things, and like I feel like that simplicity on just like less is more if the actions are all fun and satisfying and good choices.
Yeah, and I think so. Even the getting MP from attacks kind of piece of it, right? Is if you go into a fight and an enemy's got like a whole bunch of whatever things for locks because he's immediately just going to do some big attack. It's probably in your best interest when you have full MP to just use one of your skills.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're going to hit him and you would gain 3 MP from that attack. But you're not gonna because you're already capped out. So you may as well use this other skill. You are actively incentivized to use all of the skills because they have a particular use. They will attack. Oh, the other part we didn't even talk about is how the positioning of the enemies matters too. Yeah, so certain attacks will be able to hit like a specific area. Like if you use
the sun ball.
The sun ball from Zale, he does his little Kamehameha charge up of the sun ball, and it will hit the enemy you pointed at, and it will do splash damage to enemies who are close by them.
Yeah.
There are even certain attacks that allow you to reposition enemies around. Typically speaking, most just regular attacks and skills, everyone just, they're in their spot, they take the hit, and they stay in that spot.
Yeah.
Some attacks will move enemies, which can make the positioning of those things easier. It's not like a grid or anything like that. They're just kind of moved around. Enemies will just take up a position as the battle begins and stuff. But the interplay of all those individual things is you're constantly making a decision of, well, if I do this, then this thing will happen.
Yeah.
And then I know on my next turn that like this next thing will happen, and it's almost like it's a chess game in a little bit. You have to think a move or two ahead, right? Oh, if I use a regular attack, I'll get 3 MP back, and it'll give me the boost so that my next character can use their element and the blunt style thing, which will take off the next 2 locks on that enemy, and then he won't be able to attack me again.
Right.
It's a constant interplay of doing those things, and as the game goes on, that gets more complicated as you get more characters with more elements, and bosses will suddenly have like oh, I got to take down 8 locks in 3 turns. How do I do that, right?
Yeah, but it's like I feel like the beauty again is it's all so simple and easy to understand.
Yep.
It's almost like the Nintendo tenet that people always point to, where like I don't even know. I'm sure you know this quote. Maybe it was a Miyamoto quote. I'm not sure. But it's like, let's say you're playing a Mario game and you walk into a room. It should be immediately obvious to the player what they're supposed to do.
Yes.
The trick of the game is like what is fun and how to accomplish that. And I feel like that applies to all of the combat. Like everything is immediately easy to grasp and understand what you should be doing at any time.
Yes.
It's all laid out and easy to understand. Like in a way, it's
Yeah, yeah, it's one of my favorite tenets in kind of any game design thing. Of I don't think that the combat system is, it's not complicated, right? It's not looking at it going like, oh man, I gotta really think about what to do here. It's usually just I gotta think at least 1 turn ahead, maybe 2 turns ahead, but it also constantly presents you with all the information you need to figure out how those next 2-3 turns are going to go if you make certain choices. And that I think is what the real strength of the combat system is.
Yeah.
It's not complex enough to be my absolute favorite JRPG combat system, but it is pretty high up there in terms of you could just hand this to someone and they'd be like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. I think that's interesting.
yeah. It might be my favorite, if only for the fact that, like I said, I feel like every action is fun and every action is simple enough where, like, I feel like replaying it. Because, like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm articulate. It's like a lot of other JRPGs I feel like don't have a lot of great replayability because a lot of the strength is in the abilities that you get in the end game and the expansion. But like this game again, it feels like from beginning to end, it's all simple, it all feels good, and it's all cool to pull off in a really consistent, great way. Like I don't know. There were definitely points in this game where I was just like, all right, let me just fight a couple more. Like, I just want to fight a couple more guys
Yeah.
on my way to my thing because it's fun and I like to hit them with my cool staff.
Yeah, well, for context, my favorite combat system in any JRPG is the original Bravely Default.
Yeah.
And because I think that game has an incredibly strong job system, and it has an incredibly strong in what the Brave and Default mechanics are, and the interplay of those two things, and also the end game of that game has the same characters who use those jobs using the exact same combinations of mechanics against you, so it becomes this like JoJo stand battle of this guy's gonna do all these things, so I have to think ahead and do this.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more complicated than what Sea of Stars is, and that's why I resonate with it a little bit more. But in terms of, I think to your point, like you said, the simplicity of what it is it takes a bunch of individually simple mechanics and it fleshes out those individual mechanics to a degree where they are always interesting to interact with. And there's very rarely any point where you're like, oh man, I have this thing in my list that I'm never going to use, because every single skill that you get has a purpose.
Yeah.
It will do something like we were talking before. There's attacks later on that you get that let you actively just delay the enemy's turn. So if you're like, oh man, that boss just put up a 1-turn timer and he's got 8 locks. I literally can't do all that in 1 turn.
Right.
You got to use a delay move, and then suddenly you can structure what are the next 2 turns after that going to be where I can actually take down all those locks. So it's just these very subtle, everything is a puzzle piece that you're trying to fill in everywhere. Of like, how do I take this guy down?
Yeah, and that's like I'm with you, like the strategic elements, like that's why I love the game, the JRPGs as much as I do, like Octopath Traveler as well, is a very similar in terms of really simple components but really great strategy.
Yes.
I just love, like, as we're playing through it and looking at it again, like I just love that using the regular attack is always fun, because in most JRPGs it's like using the regular attack is always the lamest, least interesting thing to do, is to just hit attack.
It's either I'm low on MP or like, this is just some random mob in the field. I'm not going to spend all my MP just taking out a random skeleton or frog or whatever it is, right? I'm just going to smack them with my sword.
Yeah. But like in this game, smacking them with your sword is always fun, and finding new enemies is always fun because they have new attacks you have to learn, and like that, I don't know, that cornerstone of it for me really does it. But Yeah, I mean, really, all of this is to say that the combat is just awesome and easy for really anybody to understand. Like, you should go play it.
Yeah.
If you've never played a JRPG, I think this is maybe the best, if not one of the best introductions to what the genre actually is. Like, for literally anyone.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think it's very good. I mean, I'm gonna argue that Chrono Trigger's probably still like on top. I don't think this game dethrones Chrono Trigger. But I don't think it was looking to do that. I think it was looking to be its own thing. So.
Yes, right, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if Chrono Trigger is the best intro, to be honest with you.
That game's more winding and complicated, and also has kind of the trappings of '90s games, where hey, the reason why it was a little more obtuse was because we didn't have the internet, and somebody making an obtuse thing was to further that schoolyard discussion of like, did you know if you went over here you can find this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely in terms of like this one is more player friendly just in terms of understanding it and getting through it. But
most definitely, yeah. It's certainly not like literally like it's not baby's first RPG, but I agree with you that it's a great choice as an intro of like, hey, if you even are kind of interested in this kind of thing, this is a pretty good starting point.
Yeah, same. I mean, honestly, if it weren't this, I would say Mario RPG would be the intro. And maybe that's just because I played that game when I was literally like 7. And that was my first. And I feel like, I'm like, what a great intro to the concepts.
That actually explains to me a lot of the differences of why we like certain things about certain RPGs more, because that was your first one, but I played Final Fantasy.
I mean, besides Pokemon, does Pokemon count?
Well,
it hardly counts.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. That is baby's first RPG.
Yeah.
So, it is what it is. Pokemon's fun, but it's not quite the same thing.
Yeah. So, like, really the bones of what the gameplay actually is does not change. Like, I feel like our explanation of what it is, spoiler free, like, will carry you through like what the entire experience is, I think.
Yeah, if you stopped listening to us right now and just went to go play Sea of Stars, like I think you would have a grand old time if any of what we've talked about sounds interesting to you.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, it's very good. You know what we didn't even mention at all is how gorgeous the pixel art in this game is.
Dude,
we didn't talk about it literally
good.
At all.
It's
every not even just to speak to the designs or anything like that, but just how good all of the individual animations look. Everything is very lifelike and expressive, and it's colorful, and it's just a joy to look at all of the time. And when you finally start getting to like the bosses that are huge and like really, really intricate, I am a sucker for really good pixel art, and I know you are too.
Dude.
And not only that, but like the way that they move and the way that it's animated is all very convincing. Attacks all have great impact feel to it. I'm not an animator. I don't have any like real artistic critique of nearly anything when it comes to that stuff, but like, man, is this game pretty. Like all of the time, it's so pretty.
It honestly, like talking about how this game is like a retro style game that clearly was made in 2023. Like it almost feels like a AAA pixel art game. Like everything looks that good. Even when we were playing yesterday, I was noticing like as you walked around the first town, I was like, they didn't even copy and paste any of the trees. Like
No.
every single tree was a perfectly crafted, unique piece of pixel art. Like the attention to detail is unbelievable.
Yeah, honestly, it's weird because I don't even think that it's necessarily like a knock or anything else. I almost wish that like every now and then it goes into like those fully 2D like more, not really anime, but you know what I mean. Those more like cartoony cutscenes and stuff.
And I was same thing. It's like I wish this was in the pixel art because I love the pixel art.
Exactly. I almost wish it was still the pixel art because of just how good the pixel art looks. It's not that those cutscenes look bad. They don't. The pixel art just looks so good that I'm like, but you had. Okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
I guess I'll just watch this for a little bit. There's not a whole lot of those cutscenes. There's like. You can probably count on.
Six,
I was gonna say you can probably count on one hand the number in the entire game, right? So it's not like a real negative, but like I think it just speaks to exactly how good the pixel art is.
Yeah, you know what else we didn't mention too, which I thought was another one of the most amazing things about this game that I wasn't expecting is the like it's almost like a quasi Zelda like, and like it almost feels like a traditional Sony Studios game a little bit, in the way that you like interact. The world is so interactable, right? Like you're
Yes.
climbing up things and jumping over pits, but like it almost has like little Zelda dungeons that you explore as like the main dungeons of the game. I was not expecting the actual overworld to be so interactive as well.
Yeah, I guess let's talk about that a little bit, right? So actually going around the overworld, in most other JRPGs and stuff, you're just kind of walking around for the most part, and
Yeah.
you'll like open a door or you'll pull a lever and a thing will happen, and all those things are here too. But actually, just if you're watching the video right now, they just climbed up something. There's a ton of verticality into all of the level designs, which I think is really cool. You can jump across gaps. There's like little tightrope walks, like it's happening right now too. So this is doing a great job of setting me up for everything right now. So all of those things to say that like when you go and you do everything, the levels are designed in such a way where they are kind of stacked on top of each other. This is actually something where I know it's very cliche to say things about Dark Souls now, but I think it actually does something very similar to like what Dark Souls really does well in
Yeah.
its level and world design of traversing around it, and everything is like you look around and go, oh, I need to go over there and do this thing, and I'm gonna probably pull a lever. It's gonna open up a shortcut that's gonna make me be able to get through this area much easier next time. I think I said to you yesterday, I think the biggest strength of how all of the even the dungeons are laid out in the world are that you can go through something and the entire dungeon will be like long and it'll take you a while to figure out everything. You're going to go through multiple rooms. You'll do something over here that'll affect something in another room and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of all of that, the room that you walked into and then the room that your ultimate goal is, once you're done with all that, and you come back to this point at some point later, you can walk straight from that initial room right to your end goal the next time, because everything is laid out where you don't have to just traipse through all these individual things. You're never like, oh, I gotta slog through walking back here again. It's very, very, very well designed to just not waste your time.
Yeah.
At any point. Everything placed in this game is extremely purposeful, and I think that's, I don't want to say it's an underrated element of this because I don't really know that we can say that about a game that's been released recently. But I think it's something that I don't know that I've really heard discussions about that much.
Yeah, I really...
I could be wrong. But.
I mean, I think people acknowledge it, but again, like, I feel like it does so much to elevate the experience so much to make it, again, feel like there's a sense of adventure and like the world that you're exploring is organic and meaningful and interesting. But kind of like you said earlier, the fact that everything ties into each other and folds in on itself makes it just feel like this complete experience. Like even it's like it feels so silly, but like you're constantly climbing up ledges and climbing up ladders and hopping off of things, and it feels like a world where, like, again, when you're playing Pokemon, you have this disconnect of like, oh, I guess I'm walking around the world, but the only function of my character is to go over these square blocks to get from point A to point B, where it makes it feel like an experience in a whole world.
Yeah, sometimes you hit a button and a door opens, and
Right.
it's like, whoa.
Yeah, right. No, in Pokemon, you don't even hit buttons to open doors. You just walk into them.
Yeah, it's true. But I mean, like, if you're in a dungeon, like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking you're like Silphco,
Yeah,
kind
right.
of whatever it is, right? But that's like very much in the minority of what happens in those games, right?
Yeah, and so the other cool thing too is as you progress, you get different abilities that affect what you can do on the overworld. Like the first one being you get this wind push, which allows you to push blocks in the overworld to solve puzzles, and also like actually just push wind to activate fans. And as you go through the game, you get a number of overworld abilities like that, which again, like they feel like straight up well designed Zelda dungeons, like not as complicated puzzle wise, but it so seamlessly integrates with the combat, is that like you have this dungeon with X amount of enemies you have to defeat, and these things that you're going and you're finding and exploring. But like, it's just it all comes together so well.
Yeah, I think the Zelda puzzle kind of approach is a pretty apt comparison to make. It does that, but it doesn't do the Zelda thing of like you're gonna go in this dungeon and you're gonna get your new tool that is now your new thing that you're gonna use mostly for this dungeon and probably for some future ones, right?
Yeah.
You get a handful of these kind of movement mechanics over the course of the game. And they use them to their fullest extent.
Yeah.
They will absolutely put things in place where you're like, oh, this is now just a more interesting way to use this already existing thing that I've had. So it's also never a surprise. You look at it, you go, oh, I got to do this with it now instead.
Yeah, it's it's great. I feel like that whole element of the world, like you said, is a little bit overlooked in the discussion of this game, but I think it's awesome.
Yeah, most people seem to talk about like the story and the characters and stuff, which all those things those are great, but like I think the act of engaging with this game to me is even stronger than those elements. The characters are likable, but like man, this game is just it's one of the how do I want to phrase this?
It's like one of the tightest gameplay experiences.
Yeah, exactly. It's not tiresome like at any point. Like there's no reason to grind for levels or anything because as you continue through the game, experience from enemies is just scaling up because they're getting stronger as you're supposed to be getting stronger, and you don't ever need to stop and do that. If you just go and you hit fights as you go, you will be strong enough to keep going. You are never level gated or anything like that. It has removed a lot of those. Again, that's another one of those. I don't really think Chrono Trigger necessarily has that problem, but that era of JRPGs certainly did have that like, yeah, you're probably, to make it easier on yourself, you should probably spend some time leveling up your stuff here. You know, you don't do that here at all.
Yeah, and they so purposefully, like just for example, like let's say you are doing the first quote-unquote dungeon with a boss at the end, like they pretty purposefully were like there are maybe 12 or 13 encounters in this dungeon, and they just know that you will get to say level 7 before the boss, and that's where you should be. Like they very explicitly were just like, we're gonna make the player fight 12 encounters, and that's gonna get them exactly to the level they need.
Yeah, when you say tightly designed, I think that's a good way to phrase it. I imagine like maybe some people feel like they're being railroaded, but like for me it feels like it's just not wasting my time.
Yeah, it's just like it feels purposeful. Like there are games that want you to grind and where the grind is part of the fun, but the developers were just like, this game is not about grinding. It's about a tight experience.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, they had a vision, and I think they executed on that particular vision precisely how they wanted to.
Yeah. Well, and again, like it even speaks to like you could ask the question, why have overworld encounters instead of random encounters? And that's like a direct reason why you would have overworld encounters, right? Like they chose that design element because they wanted this tight experience. And like that's also very obvious. There's a character who recurs throughout the game that like their entire purpose is to make fun of JRPG tropes.
Yes.
Which like my favorite one being like, you walk up and they're all at like a round table, and the one character's like, yeah, and then we just like, we thought we were gonna die to the boss, but then we sucked down the like 35 health items that we found along the way and beefed the whole thing. And the other characters are like, that's hardly even fun. Like, you know, like they sort of poke fun at what they think is not fun in other games, like, which speaks to how well considered everything in this game is.
Yeah, like I said, I think your term purposeful is good, right?
Yeah.
There is a strong intent to every single design element of this game, and all of those design elements are meant to work with the next adjacent elements.
Yeah.
And I think they spent a lot of time tuning all of those things to be sure that it felt good to do and that nothing felt disjointed or disconnected in some way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Y'all should play Sea of Stars, my guy.
Yeah,
if you have not.
Yeah,
please.
that's my big recommendation. We didn't even talk about anything other than just like the base party.
I mean, really, yeah. This really like it is like the first maybe 2 hours of the game that we have talked about. Like that. I mean, really, that's like it.
Yeah, and fundamentally all of those things continue to go and expand out through the rest of the game. So like we could talk about it, but it'd really be sort of repeating a lot of kind of the same things for the most part. Like I don't know, you get a character who if you do his attack timing appropriately, it splashes onto other enemies as well. So it actually becomes an AoE move. And you get a character who's got an innate element when they're doing that rather than a physical attack or whatever. I think I mentioned before some of the one character skill would have the delay and just all those individual, like, here's another block, here's another block, here's another thing to build your kind of arsenal of like techniques and things of like, okay, I have now this new tool for these new situations that it's gonna give me. And yeah, it's very good. It's very, very good.
Truly, it's definitely one of my favorite games. Certainly, it's a high contender for maybe my favorite JRPG, to be honest. And like, if it's not my favorite JRPG, it's certainly like maybe my favorite to play or my favorite combat system.
It's high on my list. Like I said, I
Yeah.
don't think it's necessarily my favorite, but it's definitely high on my list. Also, the fact that I wanted to carve out time to play this game in a year where about 150,000 incredible video games were released. Oh man, and I'm glad that I took the time to do this. I actually started this and I stopped for a little bit to play Lies of P because I really had a Souls-like itch that I needed to scratch. And then after that, I came right back to this. I was like, I probably should have just played this all the way through because I'm like, man, I don't know why I stopped. I just had a weird brain worm, I guess, that made me do that. But like, holy smokes, yeah, this game's great.
And it's short too.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's not that long in terms of JRPGs. So, I guess should we talk a little bit more in depth about story stuff, because in terms of length, we could get into there is a true end in quotes to this game that does require a little extra work to get there.
Yeah, so I guess at this point, if you have not played Sea of Stars, this is probably your moment to drop out because, I mean, really, like Tommy said, we've covered everything in this game except for really what the main story beats are. And I guess at this point, we're going to kind of go through the story beats, or at least the ones that we liked the most, and really kind of get into the end and like what we thought about the game overall.
Yeah, I feel like we can mostly skip through like, I don't want to say like the first
half. Yeah,
almost.
yeah.
Not quite, but like a lot of the story beats are kind of like setting up, getting characters into position and meeting some new other characters. And then there's a couple things that happen where things really just start to take off in terms of like, oh, this is what's going on in this world here. Like, oh boy.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. So like pretty early, maybe the first half of the game, like you said, is all very standard fare. You're gaining new party members. You're going through these little interesting story beats. You find the pirates.
Yeah, I was gonna say meet a pirate gang and you try and get a ship with them.
And you take down like this legendary like pirate ghost from like centuries ago. We didn't even talk about Teeks, who's like this little lore master who kind of joins your party just as a story character. I will say like one of the early moments that like showed me like, oh, this game's gonna show you tons of cool stuff is when you go on that adventure with the pirates into like the wizard, I don't even remember what it's called, like the wizard temple or something.
Yeah, the like dead wizards, whatever it is, and
But like it's like this cool where like you walk in and it's just this wicked like space background that looks like it goes on for like thousands of miles and you're just walking on nothing. And just again like the beautiful pixel art of like these like purple artistic swirls of like this ethereal nothingness. I was like, yo, this game's got some cool stuff up its sleeve. Like,
oh yeah,
again, like even early, it's really elevating what is possible in this world, and you're like, I'm gonna see some cool stuff. I'm gonna go some cool places.
Yep. Yeah. So I guess in terms of like what I think the first like genuinely super cool story beat actually is. So through the course of the game, I think it probably was actually how our little video began. There's a gentleman who refers to himself as the archivist. Yep. And he's just kind of like clearly sitting in a room and there's like scrolls and stuff everywhere. And he's talking very high level about what's happening in the world, but also like what specifically our characters are doing. And there is a point when after it goes to like, hey, we have to stop the big bad guy, the Fleshmancer, who is kind of making the dwellers and stuff, and he's trying to wake up a world eater, and that world eater will do kind of, you know, what its name implies, right? Yeah. And then he talks about, and then and then they would have failed. They would have not succeeded in being able to beat them. And as this is happening, like you're going through a dungeon and you're about to walk through like a big door, and this cutscene is happening, and then he turns around in his chair and kind of reveals himself for the first time. It's like, but what if they actually had like a chance, and then your characters all walk through the door to meet the guy, and he becomes a party member, and he's probably the most important character in this universe aside from like the bad guy.
I love that moment, and like I feel like there was part of me that expected he was gonna show up at some point. Like it's cool because it's like a narration device. Like they keep coming back to the archivist who's narrating your adventure. But like when that happens, you're like, oh, cool. Like another just like twist on what is possible in this world. And he also sends you, he's like, I need to send you to the top of this mountain, and opens a portal. And that's when you go through the ice mountain from the messenger. And you're like, yo, oh my God, we finally did it. What a cool moment. His name is Rashawn, by the way. Yes. Like he's the archivist, but he's like, you can call me Rashawn. I have a purple robe and stuff. And
he's got the whole like you can only see random like white cartoon pupils on a black background, very like old school Final Fantasy Black Mage, but also just like all the hooded figures in the messenger. So you see him and you go, oh, this is probably directly related to the messenger somehow. And then you go to a location from the messenger, and then after he joins your party, the first place you're in is when you're in is it in the mushroom area?
It's no, you go to the first area from the messenger, which it's like autumn something.
Yes, and then the music from the messenger begins to play. It's like, oh boy, okay, we're really in this now. So
and then you go through all of those levels are levels from the messenger until you hit the Temple of Time, which is also like, it's not called the Temple of Time. It's called something.
I know what you mean. I don't remember the name of it.
But that temple is also present in the messenger, and so like there's almost this little self-contained world that will become the messenger in the future somehow. That like you're like, man, what a cool like connection, but also just like a hype moment for everyone who played that game.
Yeah, exactly. You will probably be like, oh, this is interesting, even if you didn't play the messenger though, which I think is also the cool part of like, you don't have to know, but for those who played that and enjoyed that game, it's just one of those like, oh yeah, all right, cool. I'm seeing where there's like some kind of through line, right? It's not a direct story connection, right? It's not like you need to know this thing that happened in the messenger to understand why this was this way. It's just, oh, this is setting up somehow the dominoes that are going to fall that are going to create the messenger, like the situation that's happening in the messenger world at that point, which is very cool.
And then like, again, like just as I really love how imaginative the stories this developer tells. Like, and I could go on and on about the ones in the messenger in this game, but like the end of that little sequence is you find the Temple of Time or whatever, but it's all of these children who are they're in the Temple of Time, and they've like remained children. They have to remain children for an eternity, and you like seek them out to help them, but like I believe they've trapped themselves there because they're like, they have tricked the Fleshmanster into thinking that they work for him, but they're secretly trying to defeat him. And it, like those just like levels of imagination that they bring to this game, I feel like, I don't know, I love it.
Yeah, that little particular thing, I think to clarify, so he had initially trapped them there because they're basically like, there's not a whole lot of technology in this fantasy world, so they're all like engineering experts, and they're very good at making kinds of machinery. I think it's just like the watch tower or the clock tower or whatever it is. Everything there is like all cogs and gears and blah blah blah, time related, cool nonsense. And the Fleshmancer, the bad guy, has cast a spell on them particularly where they remain the same age so that they can work for him for basically all of eternity. But if they leave the tower, all of the time that has passed will pass for them instantly, and they've already been there for like well over 100 years.
Yeah.
So if they leave, they will instantly just age into dust and die. So they are trapped there. So they're not big fans of him, which is why they're kind of pretending, like you said, to do what he wants while simultaneously in the background trying to keep things moving for like, we have to figure out some way to stop this guy.
Right. Yeah, and like I don't know, I feel like we won't spend time on all of those story beats, but it's just this game is filled with little story beats like that and little self-contained worlds that are just like a joy to go through. It reminds me of Dragon Quest. Like Dragon Quest is very much the same in that you go through these little story vignettes that you like explore these like little mini arcs of these characters and learn about them before you move on in a really delightful way.
Yeah, the only other thing that I can think of is it almost makes me think a little bit of Hayao Miyazaki, like Studio Ghibli kind of like like everything is very fantastical and it can be presented as whimsical, but it's not necessarily happy and positive.
Yeah.
Because even Miyazaki movies are very like, some of those things, they're going to hit you in the gut real bad. And there's going to be some like strangely horrifying things while these fantastical things are happening in the background. Because everything, again, it's intentional. It's meant to make you feel stuff, you know?
Wow. I feel like the Ghibli connection is like so obvious now that you said it, and I never put that together. But
it gives me those same kinds of vibes, right? It seems to be constructing their world in that way very intentionally, I think.
Yeah. So really the biggest, like the first twist of the game, I would say that's really deeply interesting, or maybe not the first, but the next is that there are two solstice warriors who came before you that do you remember their names?
Brugraves and I can't remember the girl's name. I'm blanking. Ellison something. I'm gonna look it up.
So while he looks it up, it doesn't matter. So basically, you're trying to defeat all of the dwellers so that the Fleshmancer cannot resurrect the World Eater. And basically, at the very last moment, Brugraves and a pink-haired lady swoop in, and they sabotage you, and you find out that they were never on your side. Like, they have been working against you, and they actually defeat you, and the World Eater, or the Fleshmancer rather, gets brought back.
Yep.
And you lose to them, like, which is one of the first, not the first, but another moment where you're like, oh, the game is really tipping its hand on like what's really going on and what the story's about. Which is really cool. I don't know how much more I have to say about that. Do you have any more to say about that?
I think what we had said before was like, I didn't see that particular beat coming, because you're literally doing a fight with your elder, and then these two were like, they were raised in the same village together, and they were all meant to be working together to take down is it the Dweller of Woe that you're fighting? Because you do a fight against one of the dwellers, and at the end, anytime a dweller dies, they have like this core thing that shows up, and then normally what happens is they smash it to like make sure that it's dead for good.
Yeah.
And at that moment after you have beaten it is when they betray you, and they don't really explain why. They're mostly just sick of the fact that they're like, so many Solstice Warriors have died for so many like generations of people over and over again, and they're tired of it, and rather than continue the cycle, they've decided that they're like, what if we lean into what's happening and actually try and work with these guys who kind of want this to happen? Can we create a different world than the one that we have?
Yeah, which I feel like is just such a cool commentary or exploration of the idea that you're playing as characters who follow a prophecy and a destiny that they are born into. Like, that's such a JRPG trope, and I feel like what an interesting way to expand upon that is that they're helping the villain because they are sick of that, and they find that to be tiresome and depressing. Like, so wild.
We'll just do this for eternity. Why do we keep doing this over and over again? We're just going to keep sending these people to die constantly. And they say no. They basically would rather things change, whatever that means, than continue to go down that path. And, you know, it's not necessarily a villain with, like, you know, good intentions or whatever it is, but it is one of those things where it's like,
it's sympathetic.
Yeah, it's exactly. It is understandable on some level, right? Is it the right choice? Clearly not. Like, what's happening is still not good. But yeah, it makes sense why they would feel that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is. I think that's also what leads right into the moment we already talked about, where Rashawn joins you, because he goes, "Yep," and then they tried to fight the Fleshmancer and they failed and they lost and everything was bad. But what if, yeah, that whole thing.
Yeah, I thought you were going to be able to play as Brewgraves and the girl, because when you're fighting against them, their attacks are so clearly telegraphed to have input timings just like Valerie and Zales do.
Yes.
That I was like, oh, they're going to join my party later and I'm going to be so sick. And
That's-
so the fact that they betray you is even more of a like, what?
Yeah, that's where I think that whole like design language of like, well, they're also solstice warriors. So
Yeah.
of course, if they went through all of this previously, like they're gonna have known those things and they're teaching you as you were growing up. So yeah, of course they're gonna have that. And they also have their lunar and solar like elements things to them too. So you kind of just see the ways that everything pieces together, you know? So,
Yeah. So I feel like really the next most important story beat probably to talk about is Garl, yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
So you're fighting the Fleshmancer. We won't do the whole thing, but you're taking down another dweller, and you do finally have an encounter with the Fleshmancer because he's basically sick of your nonsense of defeating all his dwellers. And Garl, in a predictable moment, sacrifices himself to push Valerie and Zale out of the way, and he gets hit with a blow from the Fleshmancer that pretty obviously Rashawn is like, he's gonna die from this. This will be fatal in a few days. It's not gonna last. And you're like, and you kind of knew Garl was gonna have a moment like this, or at least I did.
Yeah.
But it's still so gut wrenching.
Yeah, and so the other piece of that is the whole reason why that encounter happens where the Fleshmancer shows up is because Rashawn. So he's clearly some like crazy powerful whatever it is, and the only reason why he's along is he talks like, "Hey, I'll join your party. I'm both for gameplay and on some level for lore reasons." He goes, "I'm gonna scale myself down to fight the way that you guys do." And so when he's walking around, like he is clearly some kind of like godlike figure
yeah.
thing. And as is the Fleshmancer, because it's clear that those two have some kind of history and past. But without really explaining why, Rashawn, when you go to the Dweller fight, he sits out. He goes, I can't touch the Dweller.
Yeah.
And he doesn't say why, and he just will not do that. So as you guys are doing that, eventually another party member gets really sick of like, he's like, we have to help them, and grabs one of his time vials and throws it at the Dweller, and he goes, "You don't understand what you've done," and that's what makes the Fleshmancer show up and be like, "We had a deal, man.
Like you broke the rules.
Yeah, you broke the rules. You weren't going to interfere. Now I got to kill somebody." So so he goes to threaten the Solstice Warriors because it seems that the whole thing that's happening in the background is they have both somewhat ascended to be these like godlike beings through exploring alchemy for however long it is that they've been doing it. And they kind of have two different like viewpoints on like how the world should be, and they've inadvertently created like almost like a multiverse kind of thing, where there's just different worlds that exist and different possibilities. And the Fleshmancer has one view of how things should be, and he thinks it would be more fun to try and destroy everything. And Rashawn has basically set up in all these worlds the cycle of the Solstice Warriors to fight off this kind of eternal battle between these two sides of like, if you don't stop him, he will destroy everything. So we need to do something to stop him. But their deal is broken in this moment because of this other party member's actions.
And I'll just say, like, when the Fleshmancer shows up, I think this is one of the best villain reveals ever in a video game. Like, because they talk about him in all these terms, but when he shows up, all of his minions are there, like the human minions who have been trying to summon him. Mm-hmm. But the way that he addresses them and the way that he addresses Rashawn, I really felt like he was a terrifying villain. Like, the fact that Rashawn is afraid of him and all of these encounters go down with all of his minions, I was like, yo, I am messed up by this dude. I do not want to fight him right now. Like, and you know, like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
feel like that's hard for a game to pull off now because in every game, oh, there's a villain and he's going to be a final boss and I'm going to have to fight him. But I was like, I do not want to fight this dude. I do not feel good about it ever.
Oh yeah, and I think so at that particular moment, I think like you said, the way that he interacts with it, it's just the 1, 2, 3, 4 guys, right? He
Yeah.
basically like as soon as they're talking, he listens because he feels like he has to in order to get information because they are attempting to support what it is that he's doing, but he could not give any fewer anythings about them
What they have
at
to say,
all.
yeah.
He does not care. They are a means to an end for him.
Yeah.
But when he talks to Rashawn, it's very clear that they have a ton of history together because they talk and there's these moments where it's like it's very clear that they were old friends and that things were not always this way. In that moment before Garl sacrifices himself, it literally freeze frames everything, and Rashawn stops time for the two of them to have a conversation while everything is just frozen and like Garl's about to take this mortal blow. And he talks about, what does he call them, time shards, I think, because they're just floating around. He goes, oh, what do you call these? And Rashawn's like, oh, I call these time shards. And he's just like, you always were a better artist than I was.
Messenger reference.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's a very impactful moment, and again, like where you feel like you're reaching the end of the game, they sort of expand the idea of the possibility space of the game and the villain and of Rashawn, like in this wonderful moment. But I feel like the sequence that follows where Garl basically falls ill with whatever he's hit with.
Yep.
Like I really found to be unique and really touching and so memorable because, you know, Rashawn like says to them in no uncertain terms, like, I cannot reverse this. No one can reverse this. Like Garl, he will die.
Yep.
But basically Garl makes it his mission, as the only normal person to be like, look, if you guys died, the world was gonna end. So the fact that I took it means there's still hope. And he basically like goes and is like, okay, the only way we can do this is you need to cross the sea of stars, and you go find the giant godlike figures in the sky who like their feet is 30 times the size of you.
Yeah.
And he negotiates all of these things that he can do. Like, if we do XYZ, will you let Valer and Zale cross the Sea of Stars to find the Fleshmancer? But, like, what ensues is just so heartwarming and heartbreaking. And, like, I don't know. What did you feel about this part of the game?
Yeah, so the whole, I guess, the pretense of why he survives is, so when Valer and Zale get their initial prophecies, actually the guy who's giving them the prophecies walks over and goes, hey, actually you have something that I need to tell you too. And he tells him when the moment comes, he doesn't say what it is, ask for a flask of borrowed time.
Yep.
And so this moment has come and he remembers, and Rashawn pulls out the flask of borrowed time and goes, this is what's going to get you. You have a purpose.
Yep.
You need to only do the things that are fulfilling what your purpose is. And then once that is done, you are also done.
Yeah.
This will take you. I can't stop it. This is the only thing I can do to stave it off.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
oh yeah, and his purpose is, as you said, he's working to try and negotiate with these like sky people, giant god things of like, they need to get to this place so that they can help save the world, basically. Can you help us? And then they have their terms, and you go on some little quests, and you do some stuff, and you bake a giant loaf of bread to wake up the sleeping dragon, and to make sure that he's not mad and doesn't want to blow up the world when he wakes up, and you make friends with the giant sleeping dragon, and it's all very heartwarming. You ride on the back of the dragon, and you go back home, and Garl dies.
And they have a pretty heartbreaking funeral for Garl.
Oh, it goes on for so long too.
Dude.
The image that got me, that made me go like, oh man, oh, this hurts, is after they do their little funeral sequence, it shows two still images of Valer and Zale, and Valer is just punching a tree.
Yeah.
And the other one is Zale just like slumped against like a wall or a ship or something like that, and he's clearly just like doesn't have any idea what to do with himself.
Yeah. I told you this earlier, or yesterday rather, but like during this part of the game, like during the hour that this happened, my wife had to like leave the house. It was like a Saturday or something, and she went, and like me alone in my house, like ugly cried. So like it hit me and it hurt my soul, but like I don't know. I really, as sad as it is, I don't think I've ever played a game that has explored the idea of what it feels like to mourn somebody who's gone or mourn somebody with a terminal illness. And like I don't know. Again, in terms of everything in this game being purposeful, I don't know what happened to these creators that they felt like we need to honor the memory of what it feels like. But like for me, it truly was like a very healing thing to play this part of the game and to like I don't know, see what it feels like on a screen represented of what it feels like to lose somebody important. And like they handle this part with so much grace and like you said, like all of the NPCs in the game comment about how much they miss Garl and what a good person he was.
Yep.
And I don't know, it really makes you feel like how Garl was the heart of the game the whole time, even though you didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Like I love that he's the only one. Like you fight Malcolmud, who's one of the early bosses, and Garl's the one who like talks him off the ledge and turns him into no longer a villain.
Yes.
And like the game is actually filled with moments like that of Garl really being the one to push the party forward.
Oh yeah, he's very much the like the plucky young. Hey, you know what? I know that this is how things are supposed to go, but like I'm just gonna go for it. I'm just gonna try because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's just what he is the whole time. And so seeing him, again, selflessly sacrifice himself because he knows ultimately it is the thing to do for the greater good. But also he clearly, in the grand scheme of things, has a purpose and had his own prophecy and blah, blah, blah. Which, I guess there's probably arguments to be made for and against that, but like, yeah. I think he's a great character, personally.
I love him.
I'm sure there's some people who probably think that, in a way, this game being kind of like the Garl show in a bunch of ways might not necessarily be a positive thing, but I think it was a good choice, personally.
Yeah, I loved it, and again, like, he really just, I think, stands as, like, maybe my favorite character in an RPG like this. Like, I don't know, I find him to be such a meaningful thing, and like I said, just a game taking on like what does it mean to like mourn somebody who's important to you, I find to be like a really powerful idea. And like, not to get into my gripes about AAA story driven games, which I would be so happy to do, but like this game not really being one of those and still having one of the best like one of the most memorable story experiences that I've ever had in a game, it just speaks more to like what a unique vision they had for this game. So I don't know, man, like I loved it. That was the thing that put this game over the top for me, weirdly enough, that I was like, wow, they're doing something brave and emotional that a lot of games are not willing to do, or if they did, would not pull it off so well.
Oh yeah, and I mean it also goes like he's no longer a member of your party anymore. You don't like get like a Garl replacement character immediately. Like his like skills and combo stuff, like you don't get to use those things anymore. There is technically a gameplay consequence to the story beat as well, So yeah, he's just not there.
Yeah, which is another way you feel the impact of him being gone, because you're like, man, Garl had excuse me.
Oh, he's dying. Oh my god, drink the water.
He had the best heal, at least if you want to heal one character, and now you are without that in combat. So yeah, it's great. So where do we go next for the story? Do we kind of jump to the end? After that, it kind of rushes to the end a little bit, I feel like.
Yeah, so the whole what I want to say before because I feel like we probably should kind of rush mostly to the end, and we can get to like doing the extra stuff that lets you get to the true end and blah blah blah. So what I think that, to me, it's the coolest moment in the entire game is when you actually get to go to the namesake of the game, the Sea of Stars. Because that was the whole point of Garl's sacrifice and what he's doing. So he passes away, and they take, like, in-game, like, a couple of weeks to, like, mourn him. And they talk about how they're like, yeah, we got to give them some time because we don't really know exactly what's going to be next, so we don't want to just throw them into whatever the next thing is. So they do that, and then they go, all right, we're going to go to the Sea of Stars. And so whatever happens where you get to actually go to the Sea of Stars, talk to the big giant people, and they open up the way, and you go in your ghost ship basically into the ocean, like down into the water. And as you go through there, they're like, all right, so we're now traveling to another world, and you're going, and your little pixel ship is there, and then suddenly the ship is in 3 dimensions, and everything goes all crazy rainbow colors, and the art style completely changes
Yeah.
as you just like warp through this crazy portal, and you end up on the other side in this alternate version of the world, to which one of your other party members reveals they were pretending to be a pirate captain, and then they pulled down their cowl and reveal that their jaw has been mechanical the entire time, because you're in now this crazy mechanical future that has also really been taken over by the Fleshmancer, and he has a big old castle in this particular world. This is like home base for the Fleshmancer.
Sci-fi Chrono Trigger world, some might say.
Yes, yes,
But
precisely.
real quick, by the way, I wanted to say, when you go to 3D, I was like, oh man, that feels like such a logical thing for them to do, because in the Messenger, their big reveal was you go from 8-bit to 16-bit, and
Yep.
that's like you're like, oh, the world is leveled up and there's a new dimension. And in this game, you go from 16-bit to early 3D.
Yeah.
Is the level up of, oh, the world has another layer of dimension. And I was like, wow, that feels like such a like set in stone thing that they had to do.
Yeah,
Weirdly.
I was wondering if the next part of the game was gonna be in 3D
So did
for a
I,
second,
yeah.
and it's not. And again,
Which is fine.
Yeah, and again, as we talked about, the pixel art's so good that like I still think ultimately that was a good choice. There's no way that you should put this much effort into the pixel art and then go to the 3D stuff.
Yeah.
But that said, I still had that moment of, is this happening? Are we doing this?
Yeah, like what? But it's just such a cool visual representation for them to just explain to you really quickly, like, there is another dimension to this game that is unexplored, without having to say it explicitly.
I think part of what it is so much about the visual presentation and everything is like you're realizing that there is more to this world and this universe that you are not actively experiencing.
Yes.
They talk about how like technically there's like a lot of other worlds out there. It's not like it's not like your Marvel style multiverse kind of thing, right? But it's like, hey, there's a whole lot of stuff that exists outside of what you are currently experiencing with these characters. Yeah. And one of the guys in your party is directly responsible for like all of it, which is kind of wild to think about. So yeah, I really thought that moment was really incredible. And then this is where I think the pacing of the game gets a little bit weird.
It does.
Because you do a bunch of stuff to try and like get to the Fleshmancer's castle, and you beat another dweller and blah blah blah, and it's not necessarily like filler stuff, but it's just not quite as tightly put together as everything that came before it, which is why I don't think it's bad. I think it's just by comparison of how tight the rest of it was, the moment it gets a little bit loose, it like stands out, you know?
Yeah. Before we get into it, maybe we'll pause the audio real quick. I have to go to the bathroom.
Oh my god, I can't believe he's got to do
Just
this.
the audio. It's cool. On the YouTube, it'll still be there.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going quick. I drink so much water.
Ah!
So much.
We'll be right back, folks. All right, we're back live and are we recording? How are we? Nope.
No.
Nope.
What's going on
What's
there?
happening? Oh no.
Oh, God.
Oh no. Oh,
There we go.
We're
back.
Yeah. I don't know how technology works.
Stay hydrated, everybody.
Yeah, stay hydrated. I am emptied as well.
Did you go too?
I did.
I had no idea because I came back and you were just sitting in the exact same spot with your hand on the mouse, like you didn't move a muscle. Oh,
Yeah.
Jesus. Okay.
Yeah. Remember to stay hydrated and you take bathroom breaks when you gotta. So if you
Yeah.
gotta pause this podcast and go pee, just go pee.
Yeah, just
Or you could listen to the podcast and pee.
that's what I do.
I mean, I listen to podcasts doing most things.
I was
honestly.
listening to a podcast in the other room while we paused.
Interesting.
No, I'm just kidding.
Andy's listening to a podcast while we're recording this podcast right now.
I'm getting inspired at the same time.
He's listening to his other podcast that he's on just because he needed to hear if the levels were right.
Yeah.
That's how it happens.
And they were.
Okay, yeah, good. They better be. These probably won't be because I've never done this before.
No, it's great.
Oh yeah. Also, just for some context, we are currently in the same room because Andy's visiting me for a thing that he's doing. Not to dox us or anything like that. Future ones will probably be us doing this remotely, so there might not be as much personal interplay. I could punch Andy in the head.
Ow! Ow!
Listen,
I can't believe you would say that and then immediately do it.
I didn't punch you in the head though. You held your chest. Also, I didn't punch you at all. You just lied and made everything up.
What?
This is now just a bit session. We were in the middle of the heavy stuff talking about Sea of Stars, and now we're
It's all
just
right. We're
now
keeping
we're
it
just
light,
on
you know?
Goose. We're just yeah. Listen, I remember. Yeah, we were talking about Garl. I texted you, and I just went, "Why they got to do my boy Garl like that?" And you were like, "Yeah, I know, right?" I was like, "He just wanted to adventure and cook with his friends, That's it."
And like you actually texted me before you were at the Garl bit and just like telling me where you were at in the game, and I was like, "Oh, I don't want to say anything," but it's the Garl bit's coming up. Like you're getting there. And
Yep.
yeah. So, but I think you're right. So we were talking about the end of this game's pacing, and I don't know anything about the development of this game, but I get the sense that the last few hours had to be rushed in some sense because it feels like when you go to the sci-fi world that they wanted to do more with this end bit, and it kind of quickly, you have like a few hours, you have one more story beat with some bird people, I guess, and you fight them. Which is all cool. It's all really great, and then you're a little bit rushed to the end, and then the post game. I don't know. I get the sense that they there was more they wanted to do with it.
I kind of feel the same way. I don't really know for sure. I think part of it is a little bit understandable, not just from a development standpoint, but also from a plot perspective, because the world that you go to is like, it's already super messed up. There's not a whole lot of people at all, and the people who are there are super in not great shape.
Yeah.
So there's not really as much personality or story to really even explore compared to the original version of the world that you're in. But like at the same time, I'm with you on like from how well it was put together before. It seems like there was more they wanted to do to it. There's theoretically about the same number of areas in the last in the other world compared to the original world, but there's not nearly as much to do.
Yeah, and it kind of just feels like one of those things where when you get there, again, it's another one of those moments where your concept of what this game and this world is so highly elevated.
Yeah.
And then you do like one little mission, it's like, cool, time to fight the final boss. And it's like, oh, why go through that process of elevating and bringing you to this whole new other possibility space if they weren't gonna play more with that? Like I imagine almost like maybe they had puzzles where you had to do something in this other world that would connect to the first world or things like that, and it goes a little bit unexplored.
Yeah. And who knows? I don't really know. Maybe they did exactly what they set out to do. I'm not really sure.
But it's definitely really cool. Like I love this end bit, but you're pretty quick to the end once you get there.
Yeah, I do want to be clear. It's not bad. It's not even it's not even like lower quality. There's just less of it, and it doesn't feel quite as cohesive as everything that came before it. And that's really the only part of it. And again, I'm only commenting on it because it feels different, and that's it.
Yeah, and not to jump straight to the end, but I think my biggest my biggest point with that is it feels like the very, very end, like the final bosses that you fight, feel a little bit anticlimactic. Like you show up and he's like, cool, fight my warrior lady. And you fight her and then you do the thing where you fly and you do the shooty mini game. And then it's like, cool, you did it.
Yeah.
Like, and that is where I felt like, man, it feels like they maybe wanted to do more with... Even in the final one, when Rashawn and the Fleshmancer have that moment, he literally comes out, pats him on the back, they leave and go through a portal. And I was like, what? There wasn't going to be some... That was it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So I guess to talk about just kind of the beats, once you get to the new world, so like you find out that Sarai, this other party member who I was talking about before, who was the pirate captain, or pretending to be the pirate captain, I should say, is like, hey, I actually have been here because I've been looking for Solstice Warriors to help try and save my world. Because as you can see, things are not great.
And also, by the way, I don't know if this is when they do it, but there is a reveal when she's like, and by the way, I was the pirate leader captain the whole time. And they're like,
oh, yeah.
We totally knew that. And she's like, what? And they're like, yeah, we just didn't want to like burst your bubble, you know?
Yeah, they're like, it was like super obvious. Because I think it's funny because the way the designs work and how the in her pirate captain garb and stuff, she tends to just shut up and not really say a whole lot because and she also clearly like reacts like silently but very strongly to certain things being said or happening. So it's meant to be super obvious to the player. So the bit that your in-game characters are also like just as like, well, yeah, of course. What do you mean?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So it's great, but you find out she's like the leader of one of the, basically like a resistance faction.
Yep.
And that leads you through the little desert, and then you get Goopy Man.
Yeah, you get Rashawn takes a spirit guy and he makes what he calls living glass. So you have like this little cloudy boy who's in like morphing glass, and he punches stuff and he's great.
He's such a just cool, again, like to speak to how imaginative these games and these stories are, and what's cooler too is, like a lot of films, like they set up pretty early in the story, they mention something about living glass. I think that may even be one of the very early prophecies that they say at the beginning of the game, which is like so cool when Rashawn has the light bulb moment of, oh, maybe this is how I can finally make living glass. Like it might be possible. But he's a cool character, just like in his design, like what an imaginative little dude, and he sings in Daft Punk vocoder like you said, which is awesome.
And he's got like what do they call, like songster magic or something, I don't know, whatever it is, and he sings in his Daft Punk vocoder voice and like shatters this giant thing for you. It's all pretty cool and very, very endearing. I really like his design as well, and his name is B''ST, which you only put together that it was supposed to be Beast. After I said it to you, you were like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I thought it was because he's like an alien weird guy.
Yeah, well, his ultimate move is Altered, and then his
Beast.
name, which is clearly a reference to Altered Beast, the game.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, his name's Beast.
Which I did get the reference, but I didn't realize like that was the clue that you just call him Beast.
Yeah.
But and I feel like it's really hard to pull off. Like when Garl left the party, I was like, well, either there are no more party members or the last party member must be awesome and I gotta love him. And he's such a cool follow-up to Garl. Like,
yeah, he's great.
Yeah. But yeah, so then, I mean, you fight the bird people, which like, that's another thing I feel like was glossed over. There's clearly some lore of how the bird people became bird people in this bird people world. And then it's like, cool, go fight the Fleshmancer.
Yeah, so the moment there that ends up being lore significant is this like triumvirate of whatever it is they call them. I don't remember what the other term that they
call them bird people. Yeah.
Yeah, the birdmen. So Rashawn shows up and or he's in your party, obviously, and so the lead guy looks at him and is like, oh, the Great Eagle's here, and you found out, so, like, the Great Eagle's a character, and then it does this flashback where you can actually see Rashawn, and the Fleshmancer's name is actually Aforil, I believe. Mm-hmm. This is, like, a long, long time ago, and he says, like, hey, I did this thing for you for your birthday, and Rashawn gets to turn into a giant eagle and fly around. He goes, yeah, do you like this? Do you think it's cool? Blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah. He goes, I'll let you ride on my back. They have like this actual like friend banter moments. And then it flashes forward to the bad guy being like, oh, I guess you don't realize what was sacrificed for you to get that. And then Rashawn puts together like, oh, he sacrificed the souls of a whole bunch of people to make that for me, and he's actually been doing terrible stuff in the background for a lot longer than I thought he was.
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of thing. So it's one of those personal moments for like, oh, okay, so this like battle between these godlike figures has been going on some level for like a really long time.
Is that when they reveal that? They use the bird people to reveal that? I
Yep.
remember that bit. I just didn't remember when it...
Yeah, that's when it is.
Wow.
So that's what that moment is. But other than that particular moment, they feel like if you just took them out of the game, that like nothing changes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because
They're just kind of there.
Yeah, I remember very little about them being there except for like one of the bird people has some pretty important stuff to say to you because you free him like from a cage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they're like, oh cool, the Fleshmancer's Island in the sky, Dragon Quest style right there.
Yeah, you've beaten this other dweller. You basically like freed the moon and removed the clouds from the sky so that they can use the sun and the moon to make another. We didn't even talk about the eclipse thing. With the
Yeah,
dweller,
because they're the only ones who can beat the dwellers because they got the sun moon powers because blah blah blah.
Yeah, and mechanically, I think this is a thing that I think is pretty cool. Is whenever you're fighting something that is dweller or dweller adjacent, the thing to use, and normally like there's elemental weaknesses and stuff in this game, but the sun and moon elements, like lore wise, also apply to the combat where you'll do regular damage with other attacks and you'll do like 10 times as much damage on these things that have way more health than anything else in the entire game by a long shot, where when you're doing like a ton of damage, even relatively late game, you're talking like 200 plus in a hit. When you're doing like a sun or moon attack on one of the dweller enemies, or one of the like, I think all their like enemy names are like highlighted in red when you're in like a dweller area, you're doing like 500-600 damage for like low damaging attacks. You can do over 1,000 with that. So it is a huge multiplier, and it is necessary. And that is also like, hey, mechanics meeting lore and it being cohesive and stuff, which I think is very cool.
Yeah, it's great, and it's also like another way to... Like, I feel like anytime you're going to do, like, elemental weaknesses in a game, people are immediately going to think of Pokemon.
Yep.
And this game, like, they don't even try touching that. They're like, well, yeah, this is just the extension of what makes sense in the game. Like, the reason the Solstice Warriors are the only ones who can defeat the Dwellers or the Fleshmancers because of their weakness to Sun and Moon elements, and it just naturally extends into what you're doing.
Yep.
Yeah, which is dope.
Anyway, all that to say, at that point, you're basically like, all right, we're going to go punch the Fleshmancer's face in.
Final gauntlet, and then you fight Pink Hair Lady, who he turns into like this horrifying beast, which is a cool throw to Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, so you didn't realize, but like I saw her design, I was like, that's just Queen Zeal from Chrono Trigger. And then she transforms into her second form. I go, that's just the second form of Queen Zeal from Chrono Trigger. So yeah, it was one of those like, yeah, cool. And then that ends up being basically the final boss of what I would just call like the regular ending. Mm-hmm. And then you do a cool sequence where they're like, hey, it's time for us to like ascend to these like whatever god things that they're like associated with, like Luana and Solar something, I can't remember, because Solon, yes. And so they fly up into the sky, and you do like a cool bullet heck sequence where you're shooting at this giant like multi-stage world eater thing that they've been saying like, hey, this is the thing that will devour everything. And it's pretty quick and it's rather simple. But it's fun. Yeah. And then you go and you beat him, and very much just like the end of The Messenger, you do like the very last moments and you win, and you watch the bad thing go like, oh, and then just the credits roll like instantaneously. And it's great. It's a really cool sequence. It does feel a touch abrupt in this, which is also, I think, part of why there's the true ending. So I guess to skip through there's a bunch of side quests you can do. You got to do a bunch of the side quests to get it. But the one thing that you and I...
So real quick, they do tell you, though. Like, you finish it, and after the credits, they're like, hey, there's maybe some stuff you didn't check out. And they show you exactly where to go.
Yeah, so for context, you did that stuff after beating the Fleshmancer.
Yeah.
I did everything before going to there first.
Because you knew you had to.
I did, yes.
Yeah.
But one of the requirements for getting the true end is to already have done that sequence. So you cannot actually do everything until you basically see the credits once.
Yeah, right.
So,
which is like, okay, so basically, at this point, they essentially ask you to 100% the game. So each character has like a little mini quest that you can do to get their ultimate weapons or ultimate gear, which is really neat. To be honest with you, I really loved these quests. I thought they were all great. I found them all organically without a guide. I thought most of the post-game stuff was really great. Do you agree?
oh, yeah, absolutely. The only thing
Is the conches.
is the rainbow conches.
So as you're going through the game, you're finding conches just like you're finding mini medals in Dragon Quest or whatever. It's like your pretty standard fare collectible. And there's a ton of them. There's 60 in the game. But you're going through the game and you're very clearly like, oh, cool. Well, this is going to be a completion optional bonus. Like, I could seek out every conch in the game. There's obviously a cool reward, but like maybe I'll save that for post game, maybe I won't. And I think everybody's like rightful gripe is that they require you to get all 60 just to get what is basically the true ending, this second ending, which I think we can all agree was a misstep. We can all agree it was a misstep.
I mean, there's only two of us here, but yes, you and I both agree.
We can all agree.
All two of us.
Everybody on the internet.
Every single person in the world.
And, it's not that bad. I think for completion requirements, they're not that bad. It's just like the game telegraphing to you that this is a completionist collectible turning into essentially a mandatory collectible, I think was just a little lame because there are a ton of them. Some of them are not easy to find. And like, even though they give you the little parrot guy who helps you find all the stuff in the world, he's not that comprehensive or that helpful all of the time.
Yeah, you poke at a place on the map and he goes, squawk, squawk, there's blank in this place. But it doesn't give you like a list. He just says it once and you have to keep tapping on the place over and over again. And it randomly selects what thing is that you don't have for him to talk about. So if you have like 5 things in there, he might say 3 of them 3 or 4 times before another one shows up where you go, oh, there was a conch over here.
Yeah.
So it's not, if they were going to require this, there had to be a better way for you to like know where things should be to get the stuff, or they just needed to not make it a requirement. I personally, the way that I would have done it is I wouldn't have had the conches be required. And in order to not necessarily pad out the game, I think most of the stuff that you do as side quests probably should have just been part of the second world.
Yeah.
I think a bunch of it should have just been in it because it was really great. Yeah. And I think the fact that they make it optional is weird, especially when the pacing was already a little strange. They should have just made you do it. Because it's not even like it all takes a super long time in the grand scheme of things, right? They're all like really well constructed. They work with character development. The only one that I think probably should have maybe stayed optional was you get a tournament arc with Beast.
Yeah.
That you don't necessarily need to go back and do otherwise. But like doing the thing with beating the queen that was with Sarai and,
so cool.
and all that stuff like that should have just been, I think, a part of the game.
Yeah.
Personally, but that's how I feel about it.
I think the thing that irked me about it, and like I'm pretty against looking up guides, but like I hit the point where I was at 55 conches. I knew there were 60, and when I was going through the map, it seemed clear to me that I had gotten all of them. Like every location I had went to and seeked out conches, the parrot had not said, "Oh, hey, there's another conch here." So I did eventually look up where like the last 5 were, and I was like, "Oh, they were in locations I had been to, but the parrot had not given me the little signal." So I think it's worth it.
Yes.
I do think it's worth doing it because bringing Garl back and the little beats you get with him after feels cool, and it's also a shout out to Chrono Trigger. Like I think the reward is worth using the guide, but I think it is a little bit problematic, even if it's like it feels like a tiny gripe, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, and I think it's mostly just like because they they gated content behind it. That's really the only issue. Had they not gated content behind it, I'd be like, all right, sure, whatever. But,
and like it's also because the game is so phenomenally good otherwise that the minor gripe stands out as like, oh man, it's almost like just such a perfect game in every other way.
Yeah. So I guess, I mean, you actually, you kind of spoiled it a little bit.
I told everyone we were well past spoilers. They were supposed to drop out an hour ago.
Yeah, I know. But like you just said now, you're like, oh yeah, you just casually like, yeah, bringing Garl back. So the whole...
And then you beat the Fleshmancer.
Right, yeah.
After that,
right.
Credits.
Yep. That's true.
I spoiled it.
You did.
I ruined it.
Yeah, so the whole thing, like the goal of what it is that you're doing is like... the thing that the game tells you is like there's these altars that like show up and are glowing and it highlights them, and as you do the side quests and stuff, they all light up, and then you go and you get a thing and you go to another place, and that's where you basically set into the events getting what originally in Chrono Trigger was the Chrono Trigger, because spoilers for an almost 30-year-old game. Chrono, your silent protagonist, sacrifices himself, much like Garl, to save everyone else from the big bad. So it's very clearly like that moment is a callback. Even the time freezing, like that is all a callback to Chrono Trigger. And so much like that, they do a swap of like, they basically go back to that moment in time, pull Garl out of the way, and swap in something, actually Beast, who survives the hit because he's not a living creature thing.
Yeah.
And then they dig him up later, which I think is funny.
So cute, and it's very endearing, that moment.
So you get Garl back, and it's great, and you basically go back, and everything is starting to play out exactly the same way, except he basically taunts the Fleshmancer and is like, hey, don't send your minion, why don't you fight us yourself? And so you end up fighting the Fleshmancer directly.
Garl kicks him in the face at the end, which is so good.
Yeah, it's really funny. So you beat him, he kicks him in the face, and then he's clearly not dead, but Rashawn, who has left just like a puppet version of himself with you, because after a whole bunch of stuff happened, he's like, I can't be directly involved. I gotta go do some research to figure out on like how this is all supposed to play out, because this has not gone the way that I anticipated that it would in any way. And he's been alive for however many thousands of years at this point, I think.
Yeah.
And then he just comes through a portal, and he basically, like you said, taps A4L on the back and kind of pulls him through it. Is like, hey, guess what? We won.
Yeah, right? he's basically like, you lost, buddy. I'm sorry. Yeah. It feels like friendly the way he does it almost.
Yeah, there's almost no malice between those two, despite all of the like really terrible things that have happened.
Yeah.
Which, I'm gonna, as someone who's normally not like, I'm like, hey, when like you have like super mega Hitler, and then he's like, I'm gonna redeem myself. It's like, no, you put two in the back of his head. So, I don't know that I necessarily agree with Rashawn, but I also understand in the way that like their game has been going for however long, I guess. And why he doesn't want to do that, and maybe he knows more than I do, But,
and it feels like it matches the tone of the story, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I should have maybe said this earlier. I feel like once we hit spoilers, I was like, everything is on the table. I was like, once you say spoilers and people have left...
I was just trying to go in sequence. You're just like, Garl comes back, and it was like very casual.
Credits.
Like, hold on.
That's what I'm going to do
How
from now on.
How did we get there?
I'm going to do, from now on, every time we do a spoiler sequence, it's going to be like, all right, everyone, you can leave spoilers. I'm going to be like, credits.
Yeah, and
credits happen. And you're going to be like, you spoiled the whole thing.
You fight the final boss, and then the game is over.
And you're going to be like, damn it, Andy. Can't believe you.
Every single time. Why you gotta do this like that?
Yeah, so I don't know. And again, like it's a good ending, and then it's pretty brief, and I don't know. I do wish I got a little bit more of a conclusion with the characters. Well, you actually no, I'm a liar. You get a great conclusion with the characters,
yes,
because you get the little post-credit scene with Elder Garl.
Yes. Teeks and Garl are old, and so Valere and Zale, they're flying around, assumedly to the other worlds to beat the other world eaters to continue to do things, which I think is the implication. as well.
Or is it more that they are guarding this world so that the dwellers cannot continue to be resurrected? I think is maybe it's something. It's a little gray.
Yeah, it's something like that. It doesn't really need to be explained anymore. But
Yeah.
the promise that they made Garl is that every year on his birthday they'll come back to visit. So the last shot of the true ending is going back to their old hideout, and he's cooking up some soup or whatever it is, and then him as an old man, Valerian Zale. Zale? Yeah, Valer. Oh my god, I'm forgetting all the names.
Zale.
Yeah, there we go. Zale. They come in and they look exactly as they have because they're now like these god being things of the Luana and Solon thing. And they show up and he just is like, "What are you guys waiting for?" And he throws open his arms for a big hug and they start to walk towards him and it freeze frames at the end. It's great. It's wonderful.
It's exactly. I don't know why I totally blacked out and forgot that happened. We just watched it 2 hours ago.
Yeah, that's like the best part.
Yeah, it is exactly the wrap up that you want with the characters. It's very touching.
Yeah, it's real good. So that's Sea of Stars, I guess, you know? There's a New Game Plus mode where I don't actually know how the mechanics of that work exactly. I just saw that after I beat the game, there was New Game Plus, like, on the title screen. So I guess if you wanted to keep going, I assume you keep, like, your stats and maybe your gear and stuff. I really don't know. Every New Game Plus implementation is a little different because... in most games where if they gave you everything, especially in an RPG, it's just like, well, I could just skip like most of the game because I have this thing that lets me go to this other place that I'm not supposed to be able to go to yet. So I imagine it's probably just like a stats thing. I'd also imagine the enemies maybe scale up. I don't know, but it's if you're into the New Game Plus thing. I normally am. I don't know that I'll do it for this game necessarily because I don't know that it needs it. I think it is a great self-contained complete experience. Yes.
Yeah, it's I don't know, man. It's such a labor of love in every inch and every facet of this game. I feel like is remarkable and it was given so much love. I think this developer, this team, like I think they continue to be just like these huge standouts like in the indie space. Like it feels so above and beyond. And I play a ton of indies and there are so many that are so great, but like to play another one that comes out and you feel like, wow, this is such a unique standalone piece that I've played nothing like it. Like it's on a level that I really would put it up there with Chrono Trigger and put it up there with the greats. I feel like it's like unbelievable. I feel like it's an achievement, like in gaming, what they've managed to do. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like, and I'm very interested in the fact that this game has had some mixed reception online, and like I can understand that it's not for everybody, and it has maybe some potential issues, but like I really, I don't know. I wouldn't put it anything below phenomenal. I think it's so great.
Yeah, I don't even know that I would say that they're issues. I think the only quote unquote issue is the fact that I think some of the choices made in terms of the pacing and the optional content in the kind of later quarter of the game are a little questionable. But like other than that, like even the quality of that content is still very high. Yeah. So I don't even know that like it definitely isn't like a reason to be like, oh yeah, get to this point in the game and stop or something like that. You know, like there's some games where I'd be like, yeah, you know, the first half of this game is great, and then it's like they stopped trying, and you should also just put the game down. This is certainly not even remotely in the realm of that kind of experience. So at least in most of the circles that I pay attention to, which you know they like this kind of game, so they all really love it.
I think even like those. The minor pacing issues, I think they are so minor. They just feel bigger because this game is so freaking good. Like it really feels like the minorest of minor gripes. It's just like because the rest of the game is so perfectly executed.
The low spots are only highlighted because of how high the rest of the highs are.
Yeah. It's I don't know, man. I can't speak highly enough of this game. Like I'm excited to replay it at some point and like You ever like you play a game, it's like, oh, I only played this game 2 months ago, but just seeing someone else play it makes you feel immediately nostalgic for how much you loved it, even though you like just finished it.
Yeah, I did that with Dark Souls 3 like 4 times.
Yeah, it's like watching you play this over the past couple of days while I've been visiting. I'm like struck with this sense of nostalgia and love, like it's something I played 20 years ago and has been with me forever. Like I really think I think it's special. Whatever these guys do next is going to be an instant buy for me. Like
Yeah,
day one.
I'm super in on pretty much anything Sabotage is going to make at this point because they've made 2 completely different games that I think are both incredibly excellent standouts of the type of game that they are.
Yeah.
So whatever it is they work on next, whatever vision it is they have, I'm all for it. They're probably going to make like a what's the most dissimilar thing to a 2D platformer or a JRPG you can
Like
think
a
of?
racing game.
They're making messenger cart. There you go.
Yeah.
That's what we want. That's what's happening.
I would so play Messenger Card.
Me too. It's gonna go between 8 and 16-bit, like depending on the lap you're on. Maybe it'll go to 3D for the final lap. Who knows?
It'll go between 3D and the fourth dimension.
Oh,
Yeah.
and then we all. I don't know. I didn't know where I was.
Our
going with
heads
that.
explode.
Probably.
Yeah.
Someone's will.
It's great, man. Look, this has been our inaugural episode of Cryptic Puzzle. If you're watching on YouTube or you're listening, the podcast version, thanks for listening to us talk for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Look, we really love to play video games and we love to talk about video games, the two of us, but like, I don't know, more than that, I think I just really love to like celebrate games that I really love. I don't know. I just
Video games are cool. I don't know if you knew that. They're pretty cool.
I didn't. I'm glad you said it. You said it out loud because I think had you not said it, I wouldn't have had the vocabulary to express that feeling in my heart.
Well, I'm glad I did that then. You're very welcome. In fact, you know what? Don't thank me. I'll thank me for you. You know? Has that ever happened to you?
No.
Actually, so honestly, when it comes to just like, I know video games are cool, funny statement, but I like games because I think they are uniquely poised to create specific experiences that you don't get in other mediums. I think adaptations of video games are always kind of going to fall short in some way because the fact that you have a controller in your hand and you're interacting with it, when a developer has the idea of doing a thing where it makes, as we said, like the mechanics flow into the lore and blah, 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 it's a thing that only video games can do. And so whenever someone makes a really, 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 really good video game, it stands head and shoulders above like my favorite movies and stuff like that because I like movies too. Movies can be pretty good, but I don't think there's any movie I can think of that is remotely on the same scale of enjoyment to me as a really good video game, you know?
Yeah, I think you and I are very similar in that way when it comes to games. Like, I think you and me, we really like appreciate the things that make a game unique in an interactive way.
Yes.
Yeah, that's definitely like the crux of Cryptic Puzzle.
I was gonna say, I was like, and that's the Cryptic Puzzle.
Yeah,
it's the name of the thing.
Oh,
We took it from Nier Automata. It's not original.
what is Nier Automata? No.
Nier Automata, a game probably gonna be talked about in this same capacity. And man, we talked for Sea of Stars for 2 hours. How long are we gonna spend talking about Nier Automata? That's gonna have to be like a multi-parter, dude. That's gonna crush my soul. That's gonna rip my heart right out of my chest and throw it on the floor and kick it into my own face. Yeah, you heard me. Don't look at me like that.
What are we talking about?
I don't know. Anyway, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
You got any other sign off comments? You're just gonna sit
No.
and look at me like I got seven heads?
No. Look. I wanted to say. I don't remember. Okay, thanks.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.